just heard some breaking news. We're getting our Home and Security editor right back into the studio. We're hearing of 2 stabbings in central London, in Leicester Square. A tourist destination, of course, a busy part of London. Mark, thank you for coming back in at such short notice. What do we know?
Well, an 11-year-old girl, we're told, and a 34-year-old woman have been stabbed in this attack in Leicester Square. We are waiting on word, because we're in the very early stages of this unfolding incident, to determine the nature of the injuries inflicted on these to this girl and this woman. But this happened right, of course, in the middle of Leicester Square. Anyone who knows London knows that it's one of the busiest parts of the capital, a mecca for tourists from all around the world. And what we have now is a very significant emergency service response with police and paramedics on scene trying to deal with the aftermath of this incident. I've not heard yet anything about a suspect, but I'm just looking.
We understand a man has been arrested after this 11-year-old girl and 34-year-old woman were stabbed in London's Leicester Square, now presumably in broad daylight. As you say, one of the biggest hubs for tourists and residents alike, a shopping district, lots of entertainment, lots of shops, lots of restaurants, lots of everything, right slap bang in the middle of the capital. 2 people stabbed.
Yeah, just to repeat, that is one arrest of a man after he stabbed an 11-year-old girl and a 34-year-old woman. That's an assumption and a statement from the Metropolitan Police. A suspect has been arrested, a man, after an 11-year-old girl and a 34-year-old woman were stabbed, I should say.
Shocking breaking news to bring you. Mark, is that all we know at this stage?
Well, certainly the statement from the Metropolitan Police Westminster unit says that a man has been arrested and is in custody at the moment. They are saying we don't believe there are any outstanding suspects, which is one positive element to this. There are not multiple attackers from the information we have. The 2 victims confirming that an 11-year-old girl and a 34-year-old woman have been taken to hospital, but they say we await an update on their condition.
And as we know, knife crime is an issue that blights the capital. But it's shocking to hear that a stabbing has taken place in what is essentially the heart of London. And
just 2 weeks after 3 little girls were stabbed and killed in Southport, an 11-year-old girl being stabbed in central London along with a 34-year-old woman. I mean, this is becoming more of a story about violence, particularly against women and against girls.
Yes, I mean, there's no doubt that in these stabbing incidents that you see, often targeted are the most vulnerable in society, be that young people, the elderly as well. On this occasion, it's a young girl and a 34-year-old woman. We never know the nature of an attack like this or the motivation in the early stages. And bearing in mind what happened in the aftermath of the stabbings in Southport, we need to be careful in terms of putting information out there that we do not know for certain ourselves. So no word on the motivation, just that information really coming through from the Metropolitan Police that one person is in custody and they don't believe there's any outstanding suspects. But what they haven't done, at this early stage anyway, is given us any indication about a motive.
Well, Mark, just to read out that statement in full from Westminster Police, they say officers are at the scene of a stabbing in Leicester Square. A man has been arrested and is in custody. We don't believe there are any outstanding suspects. 2 victims, an 11-year-old girl and a 34-year-old woman, have been taken to hospital, and we await an update on their condition. I suppose the whole country will be waiting for that update, hoping, praying that they pull through. But again, this is a very, very shocking story. I feel like I've sat behind this desk and spoken about stabbing after stabbing after stabbing, but perhaps it is it's such a strange thing to think that this is such a central part of the country, such a busy part of the country, somewhere where Hollywood film premieres take place, where it is completely busy with tourists, with so many people around. It's a very strange place to have a stabbing, unless there are perhaps motivations behind that stabbing. I don't want to speculate too far, but I suppose people will be thinking in their minds, is this terror?
Yes, and I mean, that's a legitimate concern, and, you know, we can certainly talk about the potential for terrorist acts without saying that we have any information that this is one thing or another. And we know that areas like Leicester Square, what they call crowded places in security parlance, is a high-risk area because it attracts so many people. And you're right, not just an area where you can go and see movie premieres, but right in the heart of Leicester Square, they'll put fun fairs in, special events, especially for the tourists. So it's an area that lots of people want to come and see and to come around, because it's so very easy then to access the areas around Charing Cross and Whitehall down towards Westminster from that area. And so, of course, there are additional police patrols in any of these central London crowded places because of that additional risk. But we must caveat that, as we always do, with the news that, from our point of view, there is no confirmation of any motivation here at all. There could be a number of reasons behind, potential motivations for such a terrible event.
And we don't know if there's a relationship between the 11-year-old girl and the 34-year-old woman. We don't, as it stands, know anything about the victims of this stabbing, as I understand, just that it is an 11-year-old girl and a 34-year-old woman who have been victim to this stabbing in London's Leicester Square. No idea of a motive, no idea who the suspect is, other than he is a man.
And that is it. And it's always the same in the early stages of an incident like this, where we are as in the dark as everybody else about potential motivation and actually all of the facts. I mean, it seems to have been contained in terms of it being one girl and one 34-year-old woman. It might point to the fact that this was a very localised incident. It might be people that are known to each other. The police are alive to this as well, and hopefully, you know, the police, and they've told me as much, the National Police Chiefs Council, that they are learning lessons from Southport and the very slow nature of some of the information that came out there that allowed this vacuum to be filled with a lot of online speculation that was not helpful and indeed was actually wholly inaccurate in many respects. So I'm sure alive to that the police will be, and we await further word from the Metropolitan Police.
I would be very surprised if the police didn't release details about this man that they have in custody. I mean, clearly they've got him there. I would be very surprised if we didn't see details from that very, very shortly, which of course we will share here on GB News as soon as we have them. But again, this is such a... It's hard to overstate how central this is to the capital city of the United Kingdom. You can't get more central London than Leicester Square. You can't get more busy and crowded, and frankly, there will also have been police there.
Yeah,
which is probably likely
or certainly nearby.
Quickly.
Yeah, certainly nearby. I mean, the thing I would say, you know, about London, central London, or any parts of London, is we have a very significant knife crime problem in London. So it's not unusual for people even in these tourist spots like Leicester Square or Oxford Street quite often, areas like that, to see knife crime, to see people, young people in particular, to be caught up in stabbings. Of course, those are related often to gangs and criminal activity, and we have no indication yet what this attack might have been linked to.
And something we haven't mentioned yet, perhaps because it's so obvious, is the time. I mean, it's not even 1:30 in the afternoon. This sort of thing went on in broad daylight in the centre of one of the busiest capitals on the face of the earth. I'm reminded of the bizarre sort of machete brawl that we saw in Southend a couple of weeks ago, in broad daylight again. Am I being wrong to think that this is perhaps a more modern phenomenon of these sorts of stabbings taking place in broad daylight?
Well, I mean, I think what the authorities will tell you in terms of knife crime is that overall knife crime figures are down, but that really doesn't give, I think, a proper overview of what we're seeing in knife crime, which is significant numbers of young people now feeling that it is perfectly in order for them to carry weapons, and then getting involved in some pretty horrific, high-profile incidents, which are often caught on camera and then are shown on social media, and people get an indication of levels of violence that maybe are not borne out by the stats, but they're still deeply alarming and show that we have a very significant issue around knife crime in this country.
Yeah, I think the word perhaps becoming far more brazen. People carrying knives. As you say, lunchtime hour, there are many offices around that area, as well as all the tourist activities, the shops, the event halls, whatever, restaurants and the like. Lots of normal London residents as well will be passing through Leicester Square, as they do every workday and at the weekends too. An 11-year-old girl and a 34-year-old woman. Now, we report often on knife attacks, as Tom said, but this is quite extraordinary that it happened in broad daylight in central London, where there will have been police, if not right there in the vicinity of that area, of course, because it is central London. Mark?
The Metropolitan Police have just put out a statement saying there is nothing to suggest a terrorist connection to the stabbings of an 11-year-old girl and 34-year-old woman in Leicester Square. Nothing more on that at this stage, but this is our senior home and security producer, Tom Fredericks, who's been speaking to sources at Counter-Terror Command at the Metropolitan Police in Scotland Yard, who have said at this stage the guidance they're giving is nothing to suggest a terrorist connection to the stabbings at this stage. I'm
just looking out for any response from Sadiq Khan. Not yet. The Mayor of London, nothing from the Home Secretary as yet, but we will let you know if anyone in government or indeed the Mayor of London puts out some kind of statement. They often do when something like this happens.
It is, of course, less than an hour since this happened. We're talking in the early minutes of this event, but we are getting more information, as Mark White has been telling us throughout this. So far, nothing to suggest a terrorist link, but we're not told any information beyond that. As we were saying earlier, I think we would all be very, very surprised if, in the next hour or so, the police were not to say any more information on this suspect, who they have said is in custody. One man who has been arrested following that stabbing of an 11-year-old girl and a 34-year-old woman.
In London's Leicester Square. That's according to the Metropolitan Police. We'll bring you any updates as and when we get them.